So in this video, we're going to talk about the poetry of Lenore Keeshig-Tobias, whom I'm reading out of Native Poetry in Canada. So Keeshig-Tobias is an Anishinaabe poet. A lot of her work seems to use non-naturalistic styles, things like dream visions, things like ghost stories in the instance of New Image, for instance, her poem about this sort of dream vision ghost story in which the speaker of the poem is confronted by this vision or ghost of a Haudenosaunee warrior, and has to fight off this warrior and has these conflicted feelings about this. And it's not clear exactly what it is that's going on, whether this is a dream, whether this is a hallucinogenic vision, whether this is purely at the level of sort of symbol or allegory or what have you. And then another thing that Keeshig-Tobias does is found poems, right? So drawing on material that already exists and artistically restructuring it in such a way that it makes an artistic or poetic statement. So the first poem in this collection, and the first one that I'm going to read to you in this video, is called A Found Poem. A Found Poem. Chapter 149, An Act Respecting Indians. Section 2, subject to Section 12, a person is entitled to be registered if that person, C, is a male who is a direct descendant in the male line, or in the male line of a male person described in paragraph A or B. Section 2, subject to Section 12. A person is entitled to be registered if that person, F, is the wife or widow of a person who is registered by virtue of paragraph A, B, C, D, or E. Section 12, 1B. The following persons are not allowed to be registered. Registered, namely, B, a woman who is married a person who is not an Indian unless that woman is subsequently the wife or widow of a person described in Section 2. Chapter 149, An Act Respecting Indians. Chapter 149, subsequently and without reservation. Fathers, brothers, uncles, chiefs, warriors, politicians, where are the women? Out there, you point, somewhere. We reach out into the mist to women who refuse to see, to strength you cannot give, and will not give to emotion you cannot feel to the other half of our beginnings. We have ourselves and our daughters, and you, my fathers, have sons and sons and sons. And Section 12, 1B, in an act respecting Indians. So, I mean, this is, again, a found poem. It is built out of this official Canadian government document because the issue of citizenship for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in Canada has been extremely fraught and continues to be extremely fraught through to today. And it does as well in the United States for Native Americans, right? There are competing governmental concerns between the federal government of Canada or the United States, provincial or state governments in those countries, and then Native Americans, First Nation, Inuit, or Métis nations, tribes, bands, etc., etc. There are these competing levels of government. And settler colonial nations like the United States and Canada have historically put a tremendous amount of effort into legislating away the possible citizenship of indigenous peoples. And even in the latter portion of the 20th century into the 21st century, where to greater or lesser degrees, our countries, my United States and Canada, have attempted to somewhat correct their treatment of indigenous peoples, it has generally not been amazingly successful. And there remain these sort of fraught issues of citizenship and access to the benefits of being a citizen, etc., etc. For instance, in the US, we've had issues over the past several election cycles because one of the things that some politicians, particularly right-wing politicians, are pushing for is increased stringency to voter ID requirements. And the problem is that many people, well, one of the many problems with that is that many people who live on reservations who are enrolled as voters and eligible to vote in the United States don't necessarily have the street address that would be required for the way that those laws are often constructed. And so one of the knockoff effects or intentional effects would be to purposefully deprive indigenous people of the full opportunity to participate in citizenship through voting. The same kind of issues exist in Canada, and these sort of issues of, and this is not simply a question of oppression. This is also the tricky thing about it, right? It's not simply that the US and Canadian governments are depriving indigenous people of citizenship. There's also debate among indigenous people themselves about to what degree citizenship in settler, colonial, and capitalist nations should be sought, should be embraced, how the citizenship in Canada or the United States should connect or counterbalance or work against citizenship in their own nation, tribe, or band. So all of these things are difficult. But what Keeshig-Tobias's found poem highlights that I think is really interesting, even beyond that sort of larger pan-indigenous issue of citizenship rights and how these things are getting addressed, is, at least in Canada, where I'm slightly more familiar with the citizenship laws related to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, the citizenship rights of women have often legislatively been tied to men, fathers, husbands, etc. And like the sections of this law that she includes in this poem point this out. But like, if you were an indigenous woman, let's say you're a member of a registered Anishinaabe band, right? And you marry an Irish Canadian. You lose your status within that band, traditionally. I think that's now changed, but for a long, long time, that was the law, right? It was like, if you married as a woman, if you married outside of that tribe, that band, that nation, whatever it was, then you would lose your status as a member of that tribe, band, or nation. So, again, what Keeshig-Tobias is doing that's really interesting on a poetic level or an aesthetic level is taking this document that is not itself poetic and by sort of slicing it in and sort of building in that repetition, right? At the end of every line and the start of the next line, the word is repeated. So a person is entitled to be registered if that person, C, is a male who is a direct descendant in, right? So that's sort of that. There's a stylization here of this basically non-artistic text in order to bring out the ways in which this constructs conceptions of citizenship and shapes the consideration of who is entitled to be a citizen and why they're entitled to be a citizen. So that's something that we do see repeatedly in this body of poetry. The other thing that we often see in these poems is dream poetry. The next one I'm going to read you is At Sunrise, and this is a sort of dream poem building on nature imagery, which again is very, very typical for Indigenous writers. Nature imagery, engagement with the natural world, these kinds of things tend to be very, very common because they are fundamental components of many Indigenous cultures traditionally. So this is At Sunrise. Yes, I am afraid of the timeless motion, the cool green depth, and the dark silence that would follow should I drown there. So strange then that I should meet sunrise at one of those places in my dreams where passage is always difficult and frightening, that stretch of shoreline on the east side of the reserve and the road, with the clouds so low I thought I'd missed the moment and knew not exactly what I was looking for in the sunrise. With the clouds so low, so morning fresh, I thought I could step out onto the water, stretch up my arms and touch those wondrous beings. The waves rolled in, singing, pushing pebbles higher onto the shore and took my breath away. Who was I to think I could walk on water? Sunrise it was then, with pink and gold reflections undulating across the waves, mounting and splashing at my feet again and again, and I cast my tobacco prayers onto the waves. Sunrise it was that warmed my shoulders as I left the shore and crossed over the road to my sister's house and our 7 sleeping daughters. So again, there is certainly a dream vision aspect to this, right? It is non-realistic in that sense, right? This notion of like meeting sunrise in my dreams at this liminal space, the edge of a lake or a body of water, that boundary between the land and the water, right? This, of course, is a deeply symbolic place across cultures, right? Liminality is traditionally a space of possibility and peril, right? The dream is also a liminal space, right? What exactly it is liminal between is an open question, but it is a space between the waking world of the conscious mind and something beyond, whether we put that down to merely the unconscious mind, whether we regard dreams as sort of visions of a profound universal truth or some sort of depth that revelation of the afterlife or the fundamental transcendental nature of the universe or whatever it is, right? There's a sense that the dream space is a space that we pass into and out of. And so in this sense, it is again a liminal space. And sort of the focus on movement, the movement of the natural world, right, sort of parallels this experience of being in this liminal space, this space that opens up possibilities of change and uncertainty, right? Sunrise is movement, right? I mean, from our perspective as people standing on the planet, the sun appears to rise up into the sky. Waves rolling in, pushing pebbles higher onto the shore. The water moves, the pebbles move. The speaker of the poem walks. The speaker of the poem casts her tobacco prayers onto the waves. So there is motion that is tied to the natural world and this natural space, right? The sun, the pebbles, the water, all of these things. And even the casting of tobacco prayers onto the waves is an engagement with that natural world. It is ritually engaging with the water, right? With the natural world. And so this sort of liminality is really interesting and significant here, because in many ways it deals with the same kind of uncertainty or ill-definedness that the found poem deals with, right? Because that's all about sort of not having a clearly delineated place in which one feels that one naturally belongs. Not properly a citizen of Canada, but also not properly exterior to Canada, right? The alternative of membership in Keeshig-Tobias's case, the Anishinaabe Nation, or in a tribe or band or whatever it is, that is also not a clearly delineated exclusive identity. And so that, and of course the role of women is much more fluid in a legal sense than the role of men. And so that sort of liminality, that ability to move between spaces or to be thrust between spaces regardless of one's will, right? This sense, yes, I am afraid of the timeless motion, the cool green depth, and the dark silence that would follow should I drown there. And then to find oneself on the shores of a body of water that one is afraid of, right? To be thrust into this space of borderlines or ill-defined spaces, cultural spaces, physical spaces, natural spaces, etc., reflects both the profound opportunities and the profound anxieties that come with an identity that is or has been made marginal in settler, colonial, patriarchal, and capitalist society.